Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Move podcast. I'm your host, Scotty Carlisle, and for the next 45 minutes to 3 hours while you're driving home on the wonderful 91 parking lot / freeway, tune in, relax, and we're going to go down a couple of interesting little dirt roads. And there is a very special guest I have today, and that is Elizabeth Peace. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm great, thanks. Yeah, I'm laughing at your driving down 91. Nobody drives down 91. You can't. You inch, you crawl along.
Oh man, don't I know that? Gotta love it. Well, I guess it's good for our podcast because, you know, we have a captive audience because they're not going nowhere.
Right? Yeah, they're not going anywhere. So when you said 3 hours, I'm like, that's accurate for a drive home.
So I wanted to do a brief introduction. I know that you have a ton of things going on right now and before. So when I met you, you were working, I guess it was a government, it was for the naval base, I think?
Yep, for the Navy, yeah.
So, okay, for the Navy. And now, correct me because I'm probably wrong. Is it the captain? Is that who is over the whole base?
Right. So yeah, it gets confusing whenever you've been in or worked for any other service because a captain is an 03, but in the Navy, nope, that's an 06. That's the captain of the ship. If there was a ship in Corona, there's a lake. There's a Navy base next to a lake, and up until about a month ago, that's where I worked.
And what was it that you did over there?
So I'm a communications director and public affairs specialist. So everything I've done for the last, 6 years for the federal government has been all public affairs, comms, speech writing, social media. And then before that, I was a journalist. So I've just been in communications for a really long time.
Wow. So you actually write speeches too?
I do. Yeah. Sometimes you have to do that part as well. And I actually enjoy that part. So I don't mind.
So you probably have a lot of interesting opinions on what's going on right now between all the politics and COVID and mask and no mask and vaccine and no vaccine and all that stuff. I don't know if I'm all ears. I'm interested because we all have different opinions from, based on our experience, right? And so I have different sets of friends that are in different groups, and they all have completely different opinions. They're all smart. I mean, most of them are. Some of them are stupid. But they probably say that about me too.
Which ones are smart, which ones aren't.
But it's just really interesting how everybody sees things differently. So you, being behind the scenes, writing speeches and being a communications person for the federal government, I bet you have an interesting take on.
I have had a joke for a long time because I have been in journalism for a long time. So as a journalist and now as a federal employee, I have no opinions. Oftentimes our personal opinions will, right? I know how not to get in trouble. Our personal opinions, getting tied into our work opinions, that's a line you don't ever want to cross. You don't want people to think you're speaking on behalf of the Navy or the federal government or, the agency that I work for now. But I will tell you one thing I am very used to is that we will have a new leader every so often, every couple of years. So not just the president, but whether it's the military or whatever agency that I work for at any given time, we have new leaders all the time. And when I'm writing speeches or I'm writing social media posts, it's never about me. It's not about my opinion. It's not about what I think. And a lot of times it may not even be about what my leader is thinking. It's about the constituents or the people that he or she is serving. And so making sure that when you are writing and you're posting things, except on my own page, but on those official government pages, you're thinking about how does the leader feel or how do the constituents feel and how do the people feel? And that's what you're posting. My own personal opinion, I am very, very good at getting everyone to dislike me at the same time, especially when I was a journalist. So I was really great at, some people thought I was a Democrat and some people thought I was a Republican, and they all hated me for it in the same article. So that was a success, right? When nobody really knows how you feel about about anything. Um, but I tend to be a middle of the road person in my personal life, which is that I think I'm just a very empathy driven kind of person. And so I will look at different points of view and different sides of how people are feeling, and then let that help. And then along with science and my own belief in what's happening at home, help me decide how I personally feel about things. And so I see all sides of the story in a lot of situations. And sometimes, even though I see all sides of the story, I might still be very right leaning or left leaning about a topic. But most of the time, I'm pretty middle of the road. And I know in politics, people hate that. They hate people like me. So,
Chameleons.
but it's so hard to know so many different people and to hear their stories and to listen to what they're living through, and then to not be that way, because you tend to understand and empathize with both sides of a situation. So for me, I am sick of wearing a mask, but then on the other hand, I can understand the need for a mask in certain situations. I am terrified of my kids getting certain vaccines. And then on the other hand, when I worked for the Navy, I got the vaccine because I didn't want to possibly pass on COVID to anybody who needs to go on a ship to actually protect and defend our country. So I understand all these different sides, and then I tend to go this way.
Yeah, and
So,
if you're gonna err, it's better to err on the side of the conservative, So better to
yeah,
be safe
yeah.
than sorry, I guess.
Right. But, but do your own research as a journalist. And sometimes I still teach public affairs and public relations. And what I tell people is the news is whatever you want it to be. If you don't agree with it, turn the TV channel. So, that most of the time in journalism, you're not going to disagree with a journalist when they're telling you, oh, somebody robbed a bank or there was a car accident. Most people watching the news are not going to go, that didn't happen. They're lying. But when it comes to politics, that's where it's really easy to say, I don't believe them, I don't trust them, so then turn the channel. So I just tell people, do your own research, actually read or watch more than one news outlet, and come to a conclusion based off of what you're seeing. Don't just go to one outlet or one side of the story and then go, nope, this is what it is, and this is what I believe, because you won't have a very well-rounded opinion.
Well, and that's, I think, the majority of people, because so if you're smart, you're going to read or listen or involve yourself in something that is very far left or very far right, so you can get the opinion, get basically what's going on in both of their minds, and then like exactly what you said. But the problem is with our genetic makeup, most of us, the majority of us, don't like to do that. We have our opinion, and then we go in search of what
Right.
confirms or validates our opinion, because that's what makes us smart and us valid and us matter. And so people, what I have found personally is that they don't want to take the time to research the other side because it pisses them off. And if they have to admit in any way that something on the other side might have a good point, and for them, they might have to change their opinion or change their stance on something, nobody wants to do that. And so
It's hard to do.
it's very
Yeah.
hard to do. Absolutely. And
Yeah, I would tell you, the older I get, the better I get at that, though. So I don't know if I was just a really slow learner. I don't know if it was just me with a really set in my ways 15 years ago. But as I get older and I'm different phases of my life, than I was 15 years ago, then my opinion will change, or maybe somebody presented me with facts that I didn't see 10 years ago. And so now I'm like, oh, wow, those are some really good points. But we live in a very soundbite driven world. And so, it's really easy to get a 30-second soundbite and to go, well, that's the truth. That's the fact. And let's just, let's go with that. Or, most people, they will read the headline of an article, but they won't actually read the article. And then they comment on Facebook and you're like, oh, did you even read the article? It was definitely in there, or they'll just read the lead. And so you're like, wow, that's, I can tell you the lead is 25 words, 1 to 2 sentences in most articles. So 25 words or less. So if that's all you're reading, you're really not getting a lot of information. And I don't know if it's just because we're distracted, if we put too much on our plate, or if we just are lazy. But, you get a lot of people that are like, well, no, but I heard that 30-second soundbite, and that's how I feel now. That's all the facts and research I needed to do. And that's not going to cut it if you really want to know what you're talking about.
That makes sense. It makes sense, and it reminds me when I used to sell life insurance, how when I first started, I would, regurgitate everything that I had learned in this is how this works, and taxes and death benefit and blah, 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 everything, right? Just throw up all over them. And I didn't make very many sales.
I was about to say that. That didn't go well, did
it? Well, and then I ended up hooking up with the number one agent in my office. And he said, okay, listen, I'm going to, go with you. You make the appointment. I'll come in with you and break the ice. And then when I start talking, you shut up. And I'm like, okay, well, obviously he's number one for a reason. So yeah, I'd like to do that. So I brought him back to one of my, friends, clients, family members, whoever it was, and, broke the ice. And then his first comment was, how can I help you? And I was looking at him like, well, we already know how you can help him, but I shut up and I let everything. And then it really made a big impact going through a bunch of those appointments and those meetings and how he interacted and the words that he said. Now looking back, there was manipulation involved, right? And it was like, wow, that guy is really good at his craft, and his craft is convincing people to do things. And really what ends up happening is he gives them enough information to make the decision, and that's it. He doesn't, once they've decided, he's guiding and just throwing as minimal as possible, and when they decided that's what then he shuts up and he just seals it up, And I feel like journalists, whenever you're writing for something, you're a salesperson and you're selling your idea. Again, this is my opinion, kind of how I just, you're selling an idea, and it's almost that same thing. Give them enough information to make a decision in the first period, part, because that's where they're going to read. And then, of course, you put all of the beef in the middle and then body. But is that
So I'll tell you the reason that we do it. It's we call it the pyramid writing, and it's give them the certain facts. You almost want to do the who, what, when, where, why, in the very opening, because if they don't read anything further than that, then at least they've got the gist of the factual information. But then from there, as you're crafting and telling the story, and you're giving more information, you're giving statistics, which can be really hard to read. You're really doing it so they can become informed. But I have not met very many journalists in my career that when they're writing, they're doing it for any type of sales or manipulation. But I do see it. And I see it from, what we would call talking heads. And so when I'm watching the news, I prefer to watch news. I don't like to watch a lot of journalists turned into talk show hosts. And not that there's not a place for that. It's just not my thing. I don't enjoy it. I don't want someone's opinion when they're giving me the news. I just want the news. I just want the facts. So
do you think there are a lot of news outlets that do that now? Or
there are some really good ones out there. And the one that comes top of my head is called Nowhere Briefing. So if you want just facts delivered to your email every day, that is a good one, is Nowhere Briefing. And there's a couple of good ones out there, and they're in my email, and I don't remember the names to all of them, where I'll get this daily digest, and every day I get only the facts, no opinion, no slant, nothing. Just tell me what happened. That's all I want to see.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. I did not know there was such thing any longer.
Yes, they do exist. And I'll tell you, most journalists who study journalism, that's what they believe in doing, and that's what they believe in writing. But then we've got, a lot of shows on TV that they are there to bring in ratings, and they are there to bring in the viewers. And so, and I appreciate the fact that they're very honest about how they feel and who they agree with politically, because then I know, okay, so if I turn to this channel, I already know how they feel about the president of the United States and the past presidents of the United States. I already know how they feel. So I can keep that in mind. And, oh, we're crossing into opinion now. And so then you watch that, you turn the channel and you watch another point of view, and then you turn the TV off because that's pretty much going to be your news cycle for the day. And then you read the news.
So my question is, when you prepare these speeches, obviously you got to do your homework. You got to do research, because if you say if you throw out a statistic and it is wrong, I would imagine there's some pretty serious backlash, or there could be.
Yes.
Has that ever happened to you?
And see, isn't that great that we have journalists? Because that's exactly what would happen. They would immediately pick up on that statistic and say, that's not factually accurate. I am trying to think I can't think of a speech where I ever put something in there that wasn't factually accurate. Definitely, if I've used a statistic, I was able to find where did that statistic come from. But now, keeping in mind that statistics alone are not factual in themselves, because any statistic can be used to give you a side of a story. Statistics can be used to back up an opinion. So you have to be careful about that. You can say, I can't think of a statistic off the top of my head, but you can give out a stat. And if it has to do with politics, let's say jobs created, you can say all these jobs were created. Well, were they created? Is it people coming back to the workforce? Or job losses? Is it people who are unemployed, underemployed? I mean, statistics can be used for any particular reason. So just keep that in mind. Just because somebody throws a stat at you doesn't mean that the opinion they're about to follow it with is going to be factual as well. But I've definitely been wrong. I don't have a problem admitting when I'm wrong, but I don't think I've ever put a stat in a speech that was inaccurate.
So when you're researching, and let's say you're doing a speech for, let's say it was the captain, and he is at some kind of an event. I remember, I think it was at the YMCA would do an event. I don't remember, but let's say you're writing a speech for him. What type of research goes into that before you write the speech? Do you spend a lot of time researching it, or is it mainly just feeling it out?
No, it's hours. It's hours. And so any good speech or any good op-ed or anything that we do, the first thing you have to think about is your audience. Why am I even doing this? Why are we even talking about this topic? And who am I talking to? And what is it that they need? And why are they even asking me to do this? And I'm going to segue away from the captain and say that when I am talking to friends who are advocates for a social cause that they really care about, and we're doing media training, we have the same conversation. Who are you talking to and why? And so when I'm advocating for my social cause, for example, outside of work, then I'm usually advocating to parents. And so I will start to think about, what do parents need to know? How am I trying to reach them? What do they need to hear? And what do I want them to do at the end of this conversation that will actually help them or help the social cause that I advocate for? So back to the speech. So first, you have to think about the audience. Why are we even doing this speech, and why did we even agree to it in the first place? And then you have to think about the voice of the person you are writing it for. I never wrote a speech for the captain with my opinion in it, because that wouldn't be appropriate. It's not my speech. But then you have to think about their voice. So like, as I'm writing in my head, I can hear him saying or not saying the speech when he's delivering it. So then I have to think about, okay, he's from New York, for example. This last captain I worked for, phenomenal person. I absolutely loved working for him for the couple of years that I was there. But he's from New York, and he has an accent, and he speaks really fast. So, I'd have to keep that in mind, that, there's certain words that he's going to say so quickly that people won't understand what that word is because we're in California. And so I would just take that word out. Or, for example, me, I do not use the word folks ever. I just don't say that word. So when I was a news anchor and the producer would write folks and it would come up on the teleprompter, I totally replaced it. I would never say that word. So it's just keeping in mind the habits and the speaking of the person you're writing for. And then also you're doing hours of research before you even start writing. And you're having a one-on-one meeting with the captain and saying, what do you want to talk about? And then I would also have to do a mini interview and say, okay, we're here to talk about Veterans Day. Tell me about the veterans in your family. Tell me about the veterans in your life. Tell me about the people you've served with, so that I could put his personal stories into the speech. And I would never be able to do that if I didn't know enough about him to do it. So you interview. So you do these little interviews. So journalism really comes in handy there. And then once you write your draft, you need to sleep on it, come back, look at all your errors and fix it. And then you're working with that person and saying, okay, what do you think and how do you feel about this speech? And sometimes they're like, that's not the direction I wanted to go, or, yep, that's great, I just want to make some tweaks. And so you're going back and forth with that person so that when they actually read it, they feel very comfortable with every word they're about to say.
Wow. And do they typically have, do they read it from a piece of paper? Are there, what are they called? The
teleprompter. Yeah. Most of the time it's a piece of paper. So I'll give you an example. If this were someone's speech that I have in front of me, then I would double space it. I would make it 16 font, and I would stop right here and go to the next page. And I would not print on both sides. I would only print on one side. So make sure you're recycling, because you use a lot of paper in speeches. But I would stop right here. And the reason why is because as they're reading, you don't want their head to go too far down that people are staring at the top of their head while they're reading. So you only go about 3/4 of the way down the page before you stop and go to the next page.
Wow. And so they would typically have the speech days or a day before, and
and then they have to practice it. And you have to, sometimes remind them, because they get really busy, that, hey, I need you to read this out loud at least twice before you actually go deliver it.
Oh man, I can just imagine you probably had some, whether they forgot to say certain things or they lost their speech and they didn't bring it with. I could imagine.
I always have a copy. I always have my own copy. Yes. I've learned you have to be really prepared. I think not with this last captain, and I won't say who, but there have definitely been some moments where I've been listening to something delivered live that I wrote, and I'm like, what is he saying?
Oh man,
I didn't write that. What is happening? What is happening right now? Why? Whoa, we just completely went off on a totally different tangent. And then you're just like, oh, we're in for a ride. And there's nothing you can do in that moment. You're just sit back and smile, because, oh
wow.
My gosh, I don't know what's happening right now. That happens.
Wow. Well, and have you used those skills? And that was probably a dumb question for advocation of, I know that you have certain things that you're pushing or that you are supporting. Not pushing is not a good word. And I don't know if you want to get into how you're active on the nonprofit side, or, the do good, be good.
Yeah, I'd rather talk about that. Let's talk about that.
Sounds good.
Otherwise, we could spend an hour with me just saying, oh my gosh, I had this boss one time.
I think it's good. I wanted to start with that because getting your background from being a journalist and who you worked for and the types of things that you do, I think really sets the stage for what comes next, which in my opinion is the most important part of why we're here. It's not, yes, it's good to make money and make an impact and do good things for business.
Yeah, I do appreciate being able to pay the bills. That's important.
Helps.
Yeah. I feed my kids and my 3 dogs. Yeah, that matters.
I'll never forget, I went to USC. I got very lucky, and they ended up letting me in after denying me about 15 times, but I'm very persistent. And finally, I got myself in there, and I was in a class, and we had to have an idea, and it was a master's in entrepreneurship and innovation.
Oh, wow.
So we had to start a startup and take it through the whole process. And my startup, my first idea was a really good idea, but it was how to make the world a better place. It was, having a community of people that are helping each other, and I had a system of how they did that. So I thought it was a great idea. So after class one day, I was walking with him. I'm, kind of smug, like, I got a good idea. You want to hear it? And he's like, sure, Scotty. And I said, well, this is what it is. So it's with my nonprofit called My Unsung Hero, and people can join, and they have to have a goal, a challenge, and a dream. And in order to be accepted, they have to help somebody else's goal, challenge, and dream. And we'll have the dream board, and and I had this whole thing and how I think it would really make the world a better place. And he looks at me, he's like, okay, stop. Scotty, and this is what he said. That is a stupid fucking idea. And I had immediate respect for him because he's straightforward, and I love that. I love somebody that can just tell you like it is and not candy coat things. And he said, Scotty, and this was at that time, who is the best philanthropist out there? Well, I guess it would be Bill Gates at the time. Why? Because he had the most money. He said, Scotty, this is a business feasibility class. Introduce a concept, show me the profit. Once you have that, then you can make the world a better place. But, and it's like, okay, dang it, I guess that is important. So.
And I'll tell you, that's where I struggle, by the way, just random side note about me, since, I'm on your podcast, so I'll go ahead and throw it in. Random things about me. I'm a very big picture person. And I don't like to get weighed down by things like details and paperwork. And I hate the financial side of anything. I don't like dealing with it. I don't want to figure out how things are going to make money. I don't want to know how they're sustainable. I just want to know how it's going to impact people. And I'll tell you, that's why I will never be a millionaire. So the flip side of that means that, in order to do what I really want to do, I need a lot more money than what I have. And I have put zero effort into figuring out how to do the money side of it so that I can do what I actually want to do. But at the very least, I can look at it and go, well, at least every day, I'm hoping that I impact one person. And if at the end of my life, I just impacted one person at a time, maybe that will have a ripple effect. And so, that's my goal, because I will never have the kind of money that Bill Gates has. And I don't have the kind of thinking, or the thought process that it takes to do what they do. But I'd say the person who told you that was absolutely right. It takes money to do a lot of the big things we want to do. And I'm terrible at that.
Yeah, well, it does warrant some thought. And,
And I like to shop. So if I had the money Bill Gates has, I'd spend more.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So what is it that now, is it one thing, or there's a few things that you advocate for?
There's one primary thing. I mean, it has its own ripple effect. And so, I end up talking, depending on who I'm talking to, because back to that audience thing, is who are you talking to and why are you talking to them? It all starts at the very top with, how do we protect kids? That's to just really narrow it down to the fundamentals. How do we protect kids? If I'm talking to adults, then it's a slightly different conversation. But if I'm talking to kids, it's different because it's got to be age appropriate. But at the end of the day, am I protecting kids? That's my ultimate goal in life.
So when I met you, I was looking for donations. Actually, I can't remember all the details, but there was a naval person in their house. There was somebody that was installing solar, and the house blew up. The guy got killed, and I was trying to find different gift cards, and then I was going to give that to the family. Mm-hmm. And I think that's how I originally started talking to you. And the reason I wanted to do that was I have a nonprofit, and I wanted to basically, the reason I started the nonprofit was my little brother. Now, my little brother, when I joined the Army. I was the man of the house, okay? And I had I think he was 6 years old at the time, and there was an 8-year-old, 6, and then my other sister was 4. And I joined the Army, and it was just my mom and them. And my little brother ended up getting molested from one of my cousins that had, came to the house, and I guess this had happened for over a year. And he told him that if he said anything, that he would kill him or kill our family. And so he never said anything. And finally, he said something to our little sister, and my little sister told my mom. Well, I was in the Army in Georgia, and I got the phone call from my mom, and she had told me that Jimmy had molested Tori, and now Jimmy is in jail. And she waited till he was in jail to call me because she knew what I would have done. And it was a really messed up thing. Well, he was 6 years old. And for the next however many years in his life, he had severe anger issues. And he got into drugs, he got into gangs, he got into everything that you could possibly imagine that is bad, that represents a middle finger to society. And he did it, and he didn't care. And it caused a lot of grief. And he was dealing with a lot of turmoil. He was dealing with a lot of grief. And there were ripple effects everywhere. Well, he ended up turning his life around. He was able to join the Army. He ended up getting married and having a little family. Well, a little bit after that, he got killed in a motorcycle accident. He was having some PTSD. He went to Iraq and Afghanistan. Some of his buddies got blown up, and he was having a hard time. And then obviously, even from before, he had demons following him around. And so I was doing this speech called My Unsung Heroes, and it was about people that had really helped or impacted me, the important heroes, and heroes I had as a kid were Bruce Lee and David Copperfield, because they were cool, they could do magic, they could kick people's ass, but really the true heroes are people that stand in the background, and they care because they care, and they're doing something to make the world a better place, and so he was somebody that was an unsung hero to me. I was his big brother, so I already knew he was proud of me and he looked up to me. But I didn't tell him as much how much he impacted me, because he represented hope. Because if he could go through that, go through all the drugs, all the heroin, all the bad stuff, and turn his life around, you know what? We all can, if we're all going through a hard time. And so he represented hope, and he was an unsung hero for that to me. And the speech was, hey, if you have somebody that has impacted you, that has helped you, go tell them, because they might be going through some kind of depression, or maybe if you're feeling depressed, there might be somebody that hasn't told you how they really feel. So the idea was to get it. Well, a little bit after that is when Tori got killed in the motorcycle accident. And so it was a really hard thing for me to deal with. And my coping mechanism was, well, you know what? I'm going to create a foundation, my Unsung Hero Foundation. And I'm going to create the TLC Award, Tori Lee Carlisle. Tender loving care, but Tori Lee Carlisle. And I'm going to go do things that are going to help people in his name. And that's what started this whole thing. And so I've done a bunch of different activities. And so when I met you, that was another activity I was doing, and they were receiving the TLC award. That's that. Mm-hmm. The TLC award is me wanting to do something for somebody and doing it on behalf of my little brother to keep his name going. And so what you do and what you advocate for hits very close home to me, and I know that it happens to a lot of people that don't talk about it. Some people do. Fast forward it happened to my son, and he was 6 years old. And all of the emotions, all of the, oh my God, I can't, no, this is not going to happen. This is not going to happen. And we ended up going a different route, and we addressed the situation. We addressed the kid. We, with my son there and him there, and saying, hey, no, nothing's going to happen. You're not going to do anything. And you're lucky that you're standing right there because those are bad things, and don't ever do that. And you don't ever have to be afraid, son. And, so anyway, that's
a lot to unpack there. So
there's a lot.
and this is where I'm gonna be like, oh, I have some stats to throw at you. Starting with, I remember when you reached out to me, the house that blew up, they hit a gas line, was 4 houses down from where I lived. But that wasn't how you found me. It wasn't because they were my neighbors.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was just
4 houses down
away
from where you lived?
Mm-hmm. Yep,
No way.
I was out of town when it happened, and my husband called and said there was an explosion. Maybe it was 6 houses. Explosion was so big that it knocked my son off his bed and shook the walls. But I mean, our home was not damaged, but multiple homes around there were damaged. There was a young mom. The gas workers had just told her, hey, we think we have a gas leak. We need you to exit the house. And she had put her children into the car, and they were safe in the car. She ran back in to get the diaper bag, and was standing right behind a wall, which is what saved her life. From what I recall, this was 2 years ago, but one of the employees lost his life, and the family that lived there, they were saved. But you reached out to the Navy because it had a Navy connection. And I do remember saying the Navy cannot take part in any kind of fundraising or nonprofit. It's not allowed. It's a federal regulation. But because we'd had the conversation, or maybe you had emailed and said, here's a little bit of the story, and here's more about TLC. And it just connected with me on such a personal level that I think that was when I said, the Navy can't do anything, but I'd love to talk more. And, life happened, COVID happened. And I think this is the first time we've really, really gotten to connect since then. But your story meant a lot to me because of my personal background and history with child sexual abuse and the advocacy that I do. And I just wanted to be able to go, is there anything in any way that I can help on that front? Because I've been advocating on that for, oh gosh, I don't know how long it's been, a decade. It's been a long time. So I wanted to say, first off, that your brother is, statistically speaking, the way that he responded as a teenager and as an adult is so normal. And most survivors, we go through this, acting out, or the phase that we go through, or whatever it is we have to do to be able to cope with what was done to us. And then it might take years after that to forgive ourselves for the very normal ways that we responded to being sexually abused as kids. And so it's so hard to look back and say, okay, I responded much like your brother did. I didn't join a gang, but much like your brother did, I responded in a very normal way once I got older, and then spent, and still to this day, struggle with forgiving myself for coping. And so that is one thing I want to tell survivors, is that I look at it the same way. If I can get through this, so can you. And if I can be where I am today and have the career that I do, and have the relationship that I do, and the family that I do, then I know that you can too. But it has to start with being able to forgive ourselves for learning how to cope with what we went through. And a lot of us struggle with that. And then for the cousin that went to prison, that's the anomaly. Most children never tell. Most perpetrators never go to jail, never even go to court. I think it's like 6%. I mean, it's extremely small. Most perpetrators get away with it. And most children who are sexually abused never get help because either no one knows about it, or they don't believe them, or they think, okay, if we just pretend it didn't happen and we separate these two, then everything's okay now. But that's not the case, because even after the abuse stops, it's not like our childhoods are just restored. Things don't just go back to normal. Things are never normal again. So, that's one thing I just want adults to understand. Things are never normal again. And we have been forever changed by the abuse that has happened. Now, can we still be happy and can we still have normal? Yes. But we will never again be the child or person that we used to be after something like that happens. So as parents, we have to understand that and be ready for that.
Yeah, it's, the loss of innocence prematurely there are a lot of repercussions that I don't think anybody has been able to completely get, everything out. It's a gift that keeps on giving in a way. But, we all have the choice of how we proceed. And I think another reason I wanted to talk to you, sitting with that experience and the confusion of not knowing what to do, but it's still there, but you're not doing anything when it's still there, and we cover it up over time. But I feel like it doesn't go away. The best way to address it is to help others. And what you're doing with the advocating, I think, is an important part of healing. Yeah. And I'm imagining at some point, whether it's sooner or later, there are going to be people that are listening to this podcast that have experiences of their own that maybe have not reconciled. And so I want to get from you, when this happened, when it happened with you or your experience, how did it sit with you, and how did you overcome, if you did, and what are things that you did to help?
Let me give the listeners and the viewers just a little bit of background so they understand my story a little bit, so they can see where I came from to where I am today. So I was sexually abused as a child for the majority of my childhood by a family member who had access to me continuously. And that is the case for most child sexual abuse cases. I think it's 60% of the time it's family, 40% of cases are an older child that are sexually abusing younger children, and 93% of the time it's someone that you know and that you trust, or that your child knows and trusts, somebody you've brought into your home, it's not stranger danger.
Did you say 93%?
Yep. 93%.
Wow.
So we get really scared, right, about when we talk about stranger danger, and we're absolutely terrified. And it's not that that's not valid. It's just that we know through lots and lots of proven research that that's not the case the majority of the time. 93%, it's somebody in our church. It's somebody in our family. It's an older child. It's through a sleepover experience. It's through somebody that we know and trust and care about, which is why handling it appropriately, if it happens, is really hard to do, because most adults are like, I don't want to accuse so-and-so from church, but my child said this. Well, I can also tell you that less than 3% of the time has it ever been proven that the story is made up or false. So 97% of the time, if a child says, something has happened to me, something has happened. And as an adult, it is not about saying, do I accuse so-and-so of sexually abusing a child? No, you're not accusing anyone of anything by handling it appropriately. You're going to let the right people investigate and do what needs to be done and get the child who's been abused, get them the kind of help that they need so that they can move forward in life. But I think the problem is a lot of times as adults, we stop and go, I don't want to accuse somebody of something, or there's no way preacher so-and-so could do that. There's just no way. And yet 97% of the time, that's exactly what happened. But okay, backing up, sorry, because I go off on these tangents, and I'm sorry, I'm a talker.
No, that's
But
good. Good information. Totally.
but you did schedule a long time for this, so we're okay. So anyway, backing up, I was sexually abused for the majority of my childhood. And like most kids, I did not tell anyone. And it wasn't until I turned 18 and barely graduated from high school. And also, as an addition to that, most children who are sexually abused are now at, and I can't remember the numbers, but significantly higher risk of being sexually assaulted when they are older, which is what I went through when I was 17. So now not only is there this child sexual
By the
abuse
same
that
person?
happens, no, by other people. And the reason why is because your perpetrators are looking for what they consider to be easy targets. And survivors who have already been victimized become easier targets because they're already still trying to figure out, how do I cope with this and how do I deal with this? And a lot of times they haven't yet. So at the age of 17, that's the boat that I was in. I hadn't dealt with it. I hadn't told anyone about it. I didn't tell, an adult or my parents. And I barely graduated from high school. And then I was sexually assaulted on a college campus when I was there for a party that I was not supposed to be at in the first place. So is any of that my fault? No, none of it was. But for a long time, I felt like I have done something to bring this onto myself. And I am the reason, and I am broken, and I am damaged, and I am worth nothing to anybody because of these things that have happened. And so I acted out. I almost dropped out of high school. I don't know. I wasn't doing anything good with my life. I had no future. I didn't know what I wanted to do. And for about 6 to 8 months, I dated more than I should have, for sure, put myself in some very dangerous situations. And finally, it was my sister, she's 5 years older than me. And she said, "You're going to counseling." And she didn't know. She had no idea what had happened to me. She had no idea why I was acting out. She didn't know. She just knew something was wrong. And she forced me into a counseling session at the age of 18. And that was when a therapist looked at me in front of my sister and my parents, who my sister had brought to the session, and said, "Who sexually abused you as a child?" So
Wow.
That was the first time my parents heard for the first time somebody had done something to their little girl. That was hard for them. That was really hard for them. I still did not go through all of the healing, but that was the start, is to finally get it out, to whether it's just in counseling or it's to your parents or it's to a trusted person, was to finally get it out for the first time. And then I joined the military, which I still am grateful for. I'm really grateful for that new trajectory of my life and finally getting onto the right path. And my thought at this time was, I went to the Air Force, I went to security forces, and I thought, I'm going to help all the people like me that need help. And so it was like the hero complex, I think. But I thought, I'm going to join the FBI. I'm going to go into the Air Force, and I'm going to go to school, and I'm going to get a master's degree, and I'm going to have the military pay for all of it. And then I'm going to join the FBI. And a couple years later, I became a mom, and everything changed. Wow. Overnight, basically, everything changed. I got out of the military, and I really had to, and I didn't know how, and I didn't do this well for several years. I didn't know how to protect my kids and to prevent what had happened to me from happening to children. I didn't know how to do that. And so I feel like, and I think all parents go through this, that first couple of years as a new parent, you're floundering. And I don't know if we all feel like failures as new parents, but I definitely did. But I can tell you that nothing will kick you into gear more than being a parent. Nothing will make you get your act together faster than having to look after someone that you care about way more than you care about yourself. And so it took a lot of counseling on my part, but it took becoming a parent for me to turn my life around and figure out, how am I ever going to be able to protect these children? However, The reason I say I feel like I failed at that was because I wasn't able to protect my kids, and I thought I was. I really thought that nothing could ever happen to my kids because I would see the warning signs, and it would never happen because I was so protective. And that's not how that works. But I found out way too late that that's not how that works. And I found out way too late that there actually is a way to prevent children from being sexually abused. And so now, as a parent, I teach that. And I teach that through the only evidence based class that exists in the entire world that I ever have heard of, to actually teach prevention. Because as a parent, that was my main question was, okay, I know now what you're supposed to do after child sexual abuse, but how do you stop it from happening in the first place? I thought I knew how. And now I actually know how. So I became certified through Darkness to Light to teach the 5 steps to child sexual abuse prevention. And I just want to tell every parent, whether you have kids or not, if you have a child in your life, as a teacher, as an aunt, an uncle, whatever it is, to go take the class. You can take it online now, and it's 2 hours. It's phenomenal. It's a really, it will change the way that you parent, and it will show you how to parent without constantly living in fear of what could happen. It will just show you how to do the best that you can.
And where is this? How can they find this online?
Darkness to Light. Their website is D2L, the number 2, D2L.org. And in fact, I should have grabbed this. You want me to grab something real quick?
Do it.
I should have grabbed this before we started. Let me show you some things, because I have it all right here. I even have, oh yeah, this is going to take us into the, oh, wait,
all right, good.
Wait, for everybody watching the video, you like my slippers? I don't wear real shoes when I do on-camera interviews. Okay, let me show you a couple of things. I guess I should have also backed up into my story. So, became a parent, and found out that I had, in my opinion, not learned everything that I wish that I knew now, about how to protect kids. And so a friend of mine, and this will take us into all the stuff that's behind me, a friend of mine was Mrs. World. And she was a Darkness to Light facilitator, which means she had gone through all the training and could now teach the child sexual abuse prevention classes. So she was the one who introduced me to Darkness to Light. And then she also introduced me to Pageants. And that was how she advocated to protect kids, was through Pageants. And I just thought, oh my gosh, married women do pageants? That's so odd. But she was Mrs. World. And with the title and the crown came this ability and this platform and this microphone for her to be able to talk about this topic that nobody really likes to talk about. It's really uncomfortable to talk about children being sexually abused. I don't know very many adults who could sit and have this conversation like you and I are having, because it's hard. I mean, children are innocent, and people are doing these terrible things to them that just, to us, it's like it makes your stomach turn, because it's disgusting. And you're just like, what kind of evil has to be in this world for people to do that to kids? And yet there's something like 40 million survivors of child sexual abuse in the world, or in the country. So it's just like, oh my gosh, it happens a lot. Let me give you the caveat, though. That doesn't mean there are a lot of perpetrators out there. There's actually just perpetrators committing so many acts of child sexual abuse before they're caught or stopped. So, just to keep that in mind, everyone you meet is not a bad person, but the people who are really good at hiding and manipulating and keeping that from you so that they can, have access to kids that they should definitely not have access to. So I wanted to throw that out there. So my friend Kaylee introduced me to Darkness to Light after we found out that some terrible things had happened in our own family. And so I became certified to take the Stewards of Children class, is what it's called. And you get the workbook, and you can take it in person, you can take it online, but they go through the 5 steps of how do you protect children so that this doesn't happen in the first place. But then also, what do you do if it does? And how are you supposed to respond? And how do you help a child who's been through this? So they go through that. And I can tell you that getting involved with Darkness to Light is probably what gave me the most healing. And for me, it was talking about it. The more I talked about it, the more that I started to heal from what had happened to me. And the more that I helped other people, the more that I realized, wow, this is very therapeutic. And I really started to come to terms with what I had gone through 20, some years before, and actually start to move forward with my life, and then really felt like I was getting my life together because I was finally talking about it. I wasn't hiding behind it anymore, and I wasn't, keeping it a secret. It's definitely not a secret. I don't know how many interviews and how many different Facebook posts I've done about it. So unfortunately, that means it's also really hard. As Scotty, I know it's hard because now you're talking about things that have happened in families. And that's really uncomfortable for families to hear. And it's really uncomfortable for families to see posted out there to the world. But by doing that, not only have I healed, but I think at this point, it's almost once a week where an adult comes to me and says, I've never told anyone this before, but I'm a survivor.
Wow.
And sometimes you're the very first person they tell. And they only tell you because they're willing to talk about it. So I feel like I've been talking for a long time. I'll let you talk, and then I'll show you the rest of the stuff I have.
No, the point the point of me talking has nothing to do with me talking. The point of me talking is I want to extract from you what you've been through and how you're coping and what you're doing to help sit with the issues that have happened, because I know that there are other people out there that have experienced it or could possibly experience it in the future, and so I would much rather hear you talk. And that's the whole point of this.
Oh, I'll keep going.
So now you're getting involved with the Darkness to Light, and then also pageants.
Yes.
Because so those happen simultaneously.
Right. Yeah. So first Darkness to Light, and then pageants very quickly thereafter. And also, I wanted to tell parents one thing. When I was in the military, now this is the captain, which is an 03, not a Navy captain, an Air Force captain, told me to read this book. And I really want to share this with everybody real fast. It's called The Gift of Fear, and I highly recommend reading it. But an even better book, especially for parents, was one that a radio listener, when I was on Radio Talk News, a radio listener called in and said, yeah, but have you read the second book? It's called Protecting the Gift. Same author, and it's all about how to protect your kids without just being completely in fear of the world. The author is Gavin DeBecker. Phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And he does address stranger danger. So he's like, all right, let's get this out of the way, because even though it's not as common, it does happen. But then he talks about, teaching your kids safety skills when they're not home, warning signs of sexual abuse, how to screen for babysitters, how to talk to school principals and teachers, and then strategies for keeping teens safe from dating violence. So really, really good book, Protecting the Gift. I want to recommend everybody read that. So I'd gotten involved with Darkness to Light, and I became certified to teach these classes. And then around that same time, I really loved the idea that we could have this platform and this microphone for speaking about things that we care so much about. And at first, my thought about women in pageants, especially these adult married women, was, wow, you got to be really full of yourself to want to do a pageant at that stage of your life. Now, I didn't ever do pageants as a kid, right? So my thought of pageants was, I had no idea what I was talking about. I'll tell you that. But I met these women, and there's like the small part of women who, because it's a competition. So a little bit of cattiness sometimes, and a little bit of drama, and some crazy things that you hear about. But that's a very, very small portion of women who do pageants. The vast majority of the women, and all my closest friends who I've met in pageants now at this point, they are advocates. and they are community volunteers. They're leaders. They are doing some really, really amazing things. It's one of the few places where I can walk up to someone and say, "Oh, hey, I'm Elizabeth. I advocate to keep kids safe from child sexual abuse." And they're like, "Oh, hey, I'm Spring, and I'm here to advocate for adoption." And somebody else will say, "Oh, hi, I'm here to advocate against sexual assault in the military." And you talk about it like, well, what's your favorite color? And it sounds really odd outside of the pageant world, probably, but we feel so close to our platforms and so comfortable with each other that we're starting conversations with, "Hey, let's talk about the hardest things that happen that nobody wants to talk about. And by the way, where did you get those shoes?" Those are very real conversations that I have with my best friends. Also, the dressing up part and buying dresses is pretty dang amazing. So I will just throw that
I'll
out there.
have to
I do
take your
like the
word for
dressing
that.
up. And I finally learned how to do my hair and makeup. So that was really beneficial because prior to pageants, I did not know my clothing size and found out I was wearing clothes that were like 2 sizes too big. I had no clue. I did not know what I was doing. So I want to thank the pageant ladies for fixing me. But
Are you still involved with pageants now?
I am. I'm competing for Mrs. California America in 1 month.
Oh, wow. That's right around the corner.
It is right around the corner. And I'll tell you, I'm a little nervous. I've been competing since 2016. So
Okay.
I've been competing for a few years, and I'll tell you, it's still, you get really nervous because you've got 4 minutes with a set of judges that you've never met before, and you only get, depending on the pageant, you only get 4 to 5 minutes to explain to them why you want to be Mrs. California and what you would do with the title. They don't give you 2 hours. They don't get to hear your whole background, and they don't get to hear your life story, and they don't get to hear how long you've been advocating or how much you care. You get 4 to 5 minutes, which, by the way, is more than what we give people when we're interviewing them live on TV in a newscast. So that, but it's still really short. So yeah, I'm a little nervous, but
Now, do you
around the
have
corner.
to? Is it just what's involved in the pageants? Is there also like singing or dancing or any of that stuff as well, or is it just like I'm not familiar? I know
That's
I've
okay.
seen.
That's okay.
Yeah.
And it can be really confusing because when you think of pageants, you think of like Miss America, and that's like, well, but wait, what's Miss USA? But wait, what's Miss Universe? And so, and then there's Miss United States and Miss Earth and Miss For America Strong. And so you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm confused. And then now you enter the world of Mrs. pageants, and you're like, oh, okay, now there's married women competing for Mrs. America. And yeah, it can get
Oh,
really
wow.
complicated.
Okay.
I've been doing it since 2016. So I'm like, I feel like I got a handle on this now. But for me and the pageant that I'm doing, there's not the talent portion, thank heavens. Nobody wants to see me on stage dancing. But there is the interview with the judges. And that's where you get to talk about who you are and why you're competing and what would you do if you were crowned Mrs. California. What would you do with your year? And then if you go on to Mrs. America and you are crowned Mrs. America, what would you do with your year? And so for me, I started doing pageants because of the platform aspect, that I get to come and talk about protecting children. That is my number one priority. And so the interview for me is the best part. But then also, thankfully, the media is interested in saying, hey, as Mrs. Riverside County, tell us what you're doing. Tell us how you're advocating. And so then I get to talk to the media, and they broadcast that message to all these parents. And I get to say, hey, you can protect your kids and keep them safe. And to me, that's huge. So interview. And then there's the stage part. And this is the part where I still get really nervous because there's the fitness, which in the Mrs. America system is a one-piece swimsuit. So yeah, I had to force myself to still work out. And then there's evening gown, which I like, but I find, like learning how to be really graceful and elegant in 6-inch heels in a dress. Sometimes that takes some practice.
Yeah, I
And then
can
there's
only
on
imagine.
stage question, which is by far my favorite part. That's my favorite, is on stage question. And then you find out whether or not you get to go to Mrs. America or you have to try again next year.
So it's once a year?
You can do more than one a year, because you could say, okay, I competed for Mrs. California America. Now I want to compete for Mrs. International. So you can choose a different pageant system, which is owned by totally different people. And you can, continue on. But I've decided to stick with the Mrs. America system. And my ultimate goal when I'm done competing is to become a director and to be able to help other girls develop their own platforms and, be able to put that out into their communities and the media and say, this is what I advocate for and this is why. So that's my goal, is to be able to keep mentoring.
I'd say that's pretty cool.
Thank you.
It's not every day you run into somebody that has so many different things that, it's just refreshing. It's cool. And I'm excited to see where you're going to go and what's going to happen. And, if there's any way that I can help, or, maybe we'll end up doing some kind of an event or, whatever, that just to make an impact, to make an impact and to help people that are suffering in some way. So.
Yeah, I would love to partner and see what we can do. I know that I moved a little further away because we went to Camp Pendleton, but I'm still in Southern California, and I would love to see what we could do. I think one of my biggest goals right now is to see how many kids can I reach, because not every child has been sexually abused. I don't know that I've ever met a child, though, that hasn't gone through something, whether it's bullying or peer pressure, or it's just not feeling like they fit in, or feeling like they have to lose weight. It's amazing in a terrible way how many of our young children, boys and girls, feel like they don't look good enough and they don't meet the standards. Back when I was a kid, it was comparing ourselves to, the magazine cover of like 17 or Teen Vogue or whatever it was, and feeling like we were never pretty enough because, the model was just so beautiful, photoshopped or not. And now it's Instagram. And so no matter what, our kids they have so much media that they're consuming and they're comparing themselves to. And so one of my goals is to not just talk to kids about body safety. And I do that. I don't know if I ever told you about the coloring book. So I created the coloring book for kids called Sergeant Bark. And it's a way for kids to talk about body boundaries, or for adults to talk to the kids about body boundaries. And so that's one thing I do, is just talk to kids about body boundaries and how their bodies belong to them. But then to also talk to middle school kids and high school kids, and even at the sorority collegiate level, just to help kids understand that they're good enough, that the way they are. And even adults are struggling with that. So I think that's one of my biggest goals, is to be able to help people understand that they are good enough and they are worthy and they do matter. I never felt like I mattered as a kid because of everything I went through. And so I think every child out there is struggling with something, even if it's not something at the level of being sexually abused. It's something, and they need someone to talk to. I just don't think they know how.
That's interesting you say that. So I'm not sure if I told you or not, but I'm on the board of a charity called SAC, Simple Acts of Care and Kindness. And there is an event every year called the World Kindness Youth Conference. And every single fourth grader in Corona goes to a venue, and the whole day is geared to teach them how to be kind and caring. And it's an anti-bullying organization. Shirley Zink, who is very important to me. I've been on the board for, I think, 10 years now. Getting old. I've been on the board for a long time, and she's just a great person. Well, her son had committed suicide, and that's how she had started this as a coping mechanism for themselves. And they figured, and he was getting bullied, and they figured, the most impressionable age is probably about fourth grade, to help kids be more compassionate. And if we can teach them these fundamental ways of being, maybe that will carry over. And so now this has been going on, I think, for 15 years, a while. And we have different speakers come in, and there's a strong man, and he's got a bullying story that'll bring tears to your eyes, and he'll, he bends rebar and he rips telephone books, and he's this big dude that ended up having a real sad story, and it's just cool. And then there's another Grandma Rose that has this anti-bullying thing, and then I was a speaker on the last one because I'm also a magician. And so I had a little stage thing where it's MOVE, the MOVE concept. MOVE is an acronym. M is make a difference in other people's lives. O is offer up your time, talents, and gifts. What do you have to help and to do, just exactly like what you're doing? V is to find victory in the small things, and that just means appreciate what you have. Even though you got slammed somehow in life with whatever it was, you still have the ability to have a positive attitude and appreciate. And then E is encourage others. And so the idea is MOVE, and then I have some magic tricks, to emphasize my point. And I get the kids up, and it's a really awesome event. And then we also had CAT, I think Christian Arts Theater or something like that, had some real talented singers and dancers. I mean, the last one that we did was amazing. COVID happened, obviously put the skids on that. But we have another board meeting soon, and they're wanting us to go ahead and do it again this year. And so there may be something that we can talk about with that, because we have, and it's for the other people that are on the board or people in the school district. And at the end of the day, we are making an impact. Kids that are graduating high school right now still remember the day that they went to this World Kindness Youth Conference. And, so it is having an impact. People are remembering it. We are looking for some people to come on board and to help, to help us help them. So maybe that's something that we can talk about too, and that would help you with your goal as well. So
yep, I would love to help. I'd love to be part of that. I think that we spend so much time, even as parents. I've caught myself doing this. We're talking to kids about how to handle bullies when we need to talk to kids about not being a bully. And that's the most important thing. Is hey, we've got to teach kids how to be kinder to each other. And I will say that the majority of the time, what I see are kids reenacting what they're seeing at home. So it's important not just to teach our kids to be kind, but to show them how. So, just a friendly reminder, if I can, to adults that, if you're home and you're judgmental, or you're talking, or you're bullying, whether privately or publicly, somebody else on Facebook, your kids see that. And then they're going to school, and they may be doing that to other kids. So we have to remember, we have to teach them how to be kind and to not be the bully, not just how to handle a bully.
Yeah, I agree. So I know you have other things to do, so I kind of want to wrap it up.
I'm sorry. I know my husband walked in, and there's even the sign on the door that says, "Do not open this door." If this door is closed, do not talk, do not knock, do not open this door. You can see great. Marines really know how to follow those signs.
I've had some podcasts where we're talking, like, for example, I had one interview. I was talking to a lady that had schizophrenia and she bipolar, and right now she's digital marketing, and she's helping people, find their story. Well, I'm talking to her, and we have this real serious conversation of when she was a kid, what was happening. Well, my son, who's 2 years old, you're screaming right there, because my office, my studio's in my house, and my wife I think she had left somewhere real fast or was coming back, wherever. She wasn't there. And so he opens the door, and I'm trying to maintain, right? And then he starts screaming, and then comes on, and then sits on my lap and completely takes over the show.
I hope you left it in. I hope you left it in. 'Cause you know what?
Of course I did.
That is one of
because that's life.
Yes, and I love it. And I'll tell you, not a lot of good things came out of COVID, but you know what did? Telework. I completely telework right now, and I love it. I get a lot done actually, not having to sit on the interstate and just wait for traffic. So better for the environment too. But also just people started to understand that we all have actual lives and we're real human beings and we have these real lives going on. We have real families. And I love getting to see that side of other people. And I'm like, nope, leave it in. You wouldn't believe how many times I was on a live town hall and one of my kids walked in and was like trying to talk to me. And should they? No. Should they have more, respect for my job? Yeah. But it's also their house. And that's, I need to do a better job of parenting on that end, apparently. But this is real life. And
It's
I
real life.
I love it when a dog or a kid shows up on a live stream. So
Yeah, no, it's good stuff, but it's like I start sweating and I'm trying to, not offend her, and at the same time, like,
yeah.
hey, well, hey, this is what we're talking about now. See here, hey, say hi, Carson. Anyway, but the last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is the idea, because different people have different resources that help them cope. And my question to you is religion.
Yeah.
Has your religion or your spirituality or your relationship with God or your thought about God or what, has that played a role in you healing? And if so, how?
Yeah. Wow. I don't think I ever get asked that question, to be honest, which is really interesting. Based off of, I'm pretty open about my religion on Facebook without trying to ever make people feel like I'm trying to convert them. But I feel like there have been times where my church has saved my life. And I don't mean that dramatically whatsoever. My church has just helped me that much when I was a single mom. And, even before that. So I am LDS and my church is really, really important to me. My church has just been there for me throughout a lot of different stages in my life. And whether it's a single mom trying to figure out how I'm gonna feed two kids without child support, or whether it's helping me because I am now remarried and my husband's an active duty Marine and he deploys. And so sometimes I have to lean on my church to help me with things. And they've always been there for me. Now, that doesn't mean that we're not going to find judgment in some cultures. There are a lot of cultures, especially if the church population is very heavy. If you have a predominant religion in one area, you are probably going to see more judgment in that culture and that community than you might see when there's more diversity. And I see that with outside of religion as well. But I will tell you that I've seen the good and bad of religion. And I still feel that at the end of the day, it really comes down to my personal relationship with Heavenly Father and my personal relationship with Jesus. And when I have been in those situations where I feel like there's heavy judgment from within my church, I have to remind myself that's people. That's not the church. That's not the teachings of the church. That's just, those are real people who aren't perfect. But within my church and within my relationship with God, it's been very strong. And I feel like for me, it has personally been very healing and really beneficial. My church has also provided me with a lot of counseling and been able to help me get through my own healing journey that I had to go through. But my husband is not a member of my church. My children are not active in church. And so sometimes it's hard. It's hard to get up on Sunday and be like, I'm going to church. Bye, family. And sometimes that can be really difficult to be like, okay, I got this. But, sometimes I hope that one day my kids will see that and that I'm leading by example rather than trying to preach to them and convert them. I'm not sure how I got off on this tangent. All you asked me was, did my relationship with God help me? And, the short answer is yes. And it has helped me a lot.
Well, I think those details help too, because again, we all come from different backgrounds. Yeah. We all have different experiences. I grew up as a Christian, and and the reason I asked that is because recently I kind of got onto this little kick where somebody had given me historical book, audio book that was called The Story of the Bible. And it basically was just a historical rendition of the different books of the Bible, how they were put together, when they were put together, different translations. This is when the Old Testament, this is when the New Testament, this is the society when this was happening. And it was really eye-opening. I had no idea all of the details that went into putting that little Bible together. And so it was real interesting because I'd never gone down that road. Well, in growing up as a Christian, I'd never have read the Bible. I've experienced verses and I've listened to sermons and been involved with church and Royal Rangers, and I've done a lot of stuff, but I've never sat down and read the Bible. And so I was like, you know what? I think it's about time. And I said to myself, I'm going to start with the Hebrew Bible because that's the original one, right? So I'm gonna go for that and then get the Hebrew translation because after listening to that, I realized that there were several translations, the Greek and Latin and all this other stuff. And so I got the Hebrew Bible and listened to the whole thing and opened my eyes, just gave me more context of the stories that I've heard before. And, there's a lot of things that I didn't know before that I was like, oh, wow, okay. Well, then I'm like, you know what? Now I'm going to listen to the Quran because I want to know. I want to know what the Quran says about different things. And so I listened to the whole Quran and opened my eyes on a lot of other things. And I was like, wow, okay, now I have a perspective. And then I said, you know what? The Book of Mormon, that's the next one. So I listened to the Book of Mormon. And I got to about 4 hours left. I'm pretty much finished with the whole thing. But so what ended up happening is I ended up having this nightmare. And basically what happened is I got too involved with too many facets of religion, and I had overload. So my mind just kind of short-circuited, and I'm, because then you open yourself to different things, and then it's like, okay, well, what is the truth? What is the way? How do I navigate this? And anyway, so this was my personal experience, and it was like, it was a very crazy nightmare, and so what happened was I said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna back it up a little bit. I'm gonna just cool my jets on the whole religion thing for a second because again, it's too much, and so, but there's something special and powerful about your relationship with God or with Jesus, and how you interpret that helps in your healing and helps in your overall health, I think. And so for me, somebody asked me, well, so you grew up Christian, and you were saved. Do you still have that? And I said, well, no, we're talking about faith. And he said, do you have faith? And I thought about it for a second. I said, you know what? I have faith. I said, my faith is probably as deep as the roots of the sequoia tree. I have faith. The details are where I get lost, because you talk to this person and they say these details, and you talk to this person and they say these details, and religion does come and they have different stories, and so it's what is the right way? I don't have that discernment. I don't have that automatic knowing, and none of us do. But what we do have is the ability to try our best and to use what we have and what we know to make a difference and to further our spiritual link with our Creator. I don't think it's possible. We have so many different elaborate, complex systems that are running at the same time, not to mention the atmosphere, but what's going on inside of us and space and everything else. And to think that somebody didn't create that. I think that creates that. I think you got to have a lot of faith for that idea. But each to their own. But I wanted to get that out because, whether or not, and this is another thing. I just last comment is that I was listening to parts of the story in different books, and I was like arguing. Well, I don't know about that, and I was putting it on the shelf. Like, I don't know that, so I'm going to put it on the shelf. But what ends up happening is that set on my subconscious. Everything I had was all sitting on my subconscious, and it was like fighting for what is right. And it caused me a lot of grief, even though I thought I put it on the shelf. I didn't. You can't. So whether or not you admit of God or the Creator or whatever it is something that us little humans can draw significant power on or through. And I just wanted to bring it up because I did see you had posted something that something about an issue or whatever, and so I just think that it's an important thing, and that we're all just trying our best and doing what we can, and a lot of times people find healing through faith. And don't discount it. If you're hurting out there, whoever's listening, if you're hurting, you're having issues, you don't know, you're confused, you don't know how to or where to go, open yourself up. Question, is there God? God, are you here? And why? What are we doing? Why? What do you want from me? And really have a sincere question and ask that, and go down that road and see where it takes you. And if it's a stop sign or you want to get off the bus and go, well, go ahead. But try it. It's something else,
Here's what I know for sure. I know that God loves us. I know that. And I know that he finds all of us worthy. And the bigger issue that I had was finding worth in myself. But I know that he does. I know he finds all of us worthy. And so it doesn't matter religion, lack of religion. I am married to somebody who's an atheist. God loves him. I know that. Does that ever, weigh on my mind that he's an atheist? Yes. But I know that God loves him and that God finds him worthy. So that brings me a lot of comfort. And I know that, so I'm a convert to the LDS church. I didn't grow up LDS. I grew up in an LDS town, but not as a member of the church. And I had to do my own research, and I had to pray, and I had to find the answer for myself. And I know that's the only way any of us, whether you grow up in a church or you convert to it, we're all actually converts, because at some point you have to find the answer for yourself, not the one that you were raised with. So I recommend doing that. I recommend praying about it, regardless of what you're praying about. I recommend praying about it and see what answer you come up with. And for some people, like my husband's, he didn't find that answer. He grew up in a very Christian home where they went to church many times a week. And it was different for him than it was for me, but I'm grateful for the answer that I got.
Well, when you see different levels of, because again, like you said, church, it's just, this is people, this is not God. And when you're involved in a church, you're going to experience people. And people are hypocrites, and people are assholes. Some people are good, some people are bad. Yep. But it's there. But if you're constantly subjected to that, and you see things that stick out like a sore thumb that are not attractive, and they, it's sick and wrong for whatever you see, then it's hard not to take those experiences, because we're all coming from our experience. It's hard not to take those experiences and apply it to everything. So that's his experience, and that's what he's just like all of us. We're trying to do the best we can with what we got from where we were from. And, and I think that the conversation, just being able to talk about whatever it is, I think that helps. And so I appreciate your answer, and I'm glad that you mentioned those details, because I think the details matter.
Yeah. No, thanks. Thanks for asking about that.
Cool. Well, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you would like to mention if anybody's out there listening?
I just want to encourage one more time for every adult, because protecting kids is an adult responsibility. And even though I have the Sergeant Bart coloring book, which is meant for kids, it's really meant for adults to give to a child to open a conversation. And please just remember a couple of things. One is that our bodies belong to us. So one of the best ways that you can help a child is to remind them that, hey, if you don't want to hug grandma or grandpa so-and-so, you don't have to, because your body belongs to you. And if you don't want to be touched, you don't have to be touched. That is so powerful to teach a child. And then you can start having the conversation, and even at a very young age, about body boundaries and how important it is to talk to an adult that you trust. Because most kids, if something happens, they won't tell their parents, but they might tell their teacher, or they might tell their best friend, or they might tell their babysitter, but most of the time they don't tell their parents because they're scared. So just remember, if something happens and if you hear about it, believe the child and get help. Get somebody who knows more about what to do next, because the reason that I think my kids are where they are right now is because they got the right kind of help, and they were able to get the right kind of counseling, and very quickly, and had a parent who believed in what they were saying and got them help as quick as they did. So my hope for my kids, and they're not off on their own yet, they still live at home, but my hope is that when they become adults and they go off on their own, that they don't learn things the hard way like I did, that they're further along in their healing than I was when I moved out and went off on my own. So my hope is that it's a little bit easier for them. But at the end of the day, I mean, I'm 41 and I still have to choose, do I want to heal, or do I want to be stuck in what happened to me? I chose to heal and move forward. So like you said at the very beginning of our conversation, if we can be where we are today, then anybody out there listening can do it too. I mean, I've had this amazing, wonderful career that I've been really blessed to have, and I'm happily married, and I've got kids. It doesn't mean my marriage is perfect, because not even close, but I'm happy, and that's the important part. So you can move forward, and you can heal, and you can go do all the things you've ever wanted to do in life. What somebody else does to you doesn't have to prevent you and stop you from doing any of that. So just wanted to give that reminder. And then just one more time, the website, if you want to take the class, is d2l.org. Or you can find my website, which is operationinnocence.org. And you can find the Sergeant Bart coloring books on there, or you can just find out more about the focus that I have and what I do.
And as far as any pageants, that's just Mrs. California. You're going to be competing in that
Mrs.
in a
California.
month, you said?
And August 14th. I had to think about the exact day of the actual pageant, because we show up a couple of days earlier. But, please cross your fingers. August 14th, Mrs. California, America. In fact, our pageant is in Uplands. So I think it's called the Fox Theater. And I didn't put those details right in front of me, but yeah, I'm excited and nervous and excited, more excited.
I can imagine. Well, Elizabeth, it was worth the wait. I know we were going to talk for,
thank you,
however long it's been. It's been a while.
It's been a while. We tried to schedule this for a while.
Yeah, but good things come to those who wait, and I appreciate your time. Thank you for being part of the Move podcast, and you're a perfect example of what Move represents, and I just wanted to get that message out there. I want other people to know that they have the ability, they have the choice, and I guess that's all I have to say. So I'm very thankful for you coming on the show, and if there's anything that we can do or work together, then please keep the communication open, and let's go out there and keep making an impact.
I know how to find you. You're on my Facebook. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
All right, everybody out there in podcast land, are you home yet? Are you still on the 91? Okay, I appreciate you tuning in, and I love you, but I gotta leave you.